Hi, this is my review of the Portkeys BM5WR field monitor. So I have owned both the BM5 Mark II monitor from Portkeys and the BM5 Mark III monitor from Portkeys, and both times I ordered this BT1 unit. The big reason was because of the wireless camera control for when I was shooting on the Blackmagic Pocket 4K cameras. This allowed me wireless control of those cameras, which was very, very convenient because if you use those cameras, you know, sometimes it's once you get your cameras built up, it's hard to get to the back of those cameras to do anything. But you know what? Technology marches on, and so does my gear. What, 4 years ago, I was all Nikon cameras for stills, and I was using Panasonic cameras and Blackmagic cameras for my production work. Since then, I have transitioned to Sony mirrorless cameras for my stills, and then I sold my Blackmagics and I bought RED Komodos for narrative work. But hey, let's talk about monitors. I've got a lot of them. The Feel World 4K 7-inch ultra bright. This is the OC G7 7-inch. I have a quite old Shogun, Atomos Shogun 7-inch. And now I have this, the Portkeys BM5WR. For my new camera systems, I had a couple of monitor requirements. Definitely had to be HDMI and SDI. They had to be real bright so I could use them indoor and outdoor. They had to have power options. Not just a battery sled on the back for the Sony NPF batteries, but I also preferred a 12 volt, input, the barrel plugs that these have. Having advanced production tools built into the monitors was a big bonus, and also having camera control was something that I really, really wanted for both the Sony system and for the RED Komodo system. And of all the field monitors out there, there's literally only one that checks off all of those boxes, and that is the BM5WR. Portkeys also has a BM7 Mark II DS. That's kind of like a big brother to this one. It's a 7-inch rather than this 5-inch. Now, Small HD sells the Indy, the Cine, and the Ultra monitors, and in a 5-inch and a 7-inch, and those will control a RED camera, but it only does it wired. You have to buy, a special adapter wire, and then you have to buy a license to make it work. So Small HD was going to actually cause more problems than it solved, because to get the camera control, you need the cable, and the cable comes out of the Small HD monitor and it goes into the EXT port in the back of the RED Komodo. And that is the same port that I plug a timecode box into. So, I would either have to use it for a monitor or use it for a timecode. And unless I was going to buy the breakout box for the Komodo and just make my rig even bigger, that just wasn't really the option that I wanted to deal with. Plus, Small HD monitors are at least twice as much as the Portkeys BM5WR. So let's look at this monitor. It has an all metal and glass build. It feels quite beefy, very sturdy. On the back, it has SDI in and out. It also has a motor control that will control tilt-a-nucleus motors. And it's also got this really kind of strange 4-pin, they call it an aviator plug for power. Obviously, you can also power it with a NPF battery. This is not my favorite thing, but this is what they chose to go with these BM5 monitors. Now, interestingly enough, on the BM7 Mark II DS, they have gone with a more traditional, maybe, 2-pin LEMO, which I prefer. Now, interestingly enough, I think the reason why this is because this 4-pin aviator is both power in and power out. So if I had the right cable, if I was running the monitor with this battery, I could come out of this and power something else. But I don't know what I would power with it, but that's the option. Also, there is the Wi-Fi antenna that's in the back here. And that's great because this thing that I used to buy for the BM5 Mark II and BM5 Mark III, this thing was like $110. So it's nice. It's actually kind of a bargain that that's included now. On the side, there is an on-off switch, which I actually prefer over a button that you have to press in and hold to turn the units on and off. I don't know, I just prefer to have a physical switch that turns it on and off. And there's also an HDMI input on the side here. Curiously, there's no HDMI out on the 5-inch monitor. There is a HDMI in and out pass-through on the 7-inch. But I guess there just wasn't any room. There wasn't enough room on this 5-inch. On the bottom, it's hard to tell there, but there is a USB here, and that's what you would use for loading LUTs. And there's also a camera remote plug here, and that's for using different cables to have camera control over different cameras. On the top, it's got 4 function buttons, and we'll talk about what those do and how to make those work later. There is an exit button and a menu button wheel that's also clicky. So you can select things doing that when you don't want to use the touchscreen, or if you have touchscreen control off. The monitor ships in this nice little hard case. It's kind of strange though that it is this small because I never use it. Because it's so small, I would feel afraid that I would lose this thing on set somewhere. Even if the monitor's inside of it, I'd be so scared that I would just lose this. So I have all my monitors in a bigger case and whatever. Now, what you get with the package is you get a D-tap to 4-pin aviator power. You get an extra antenna, and then you get a couple of cables that can get you started. This is actually a 4-pin. Okay, this is what I was talking about. This is, if you wanted to use it with this battery, this is a 4-pin to barrel plug. So this could run, I don't even know. You know what it could run? It could run a like a Holyfield or a Ascoon video transmitter. That's what it could run if you wanted to do that. And then there's a couple of plugs here that use this this strange. It's like a USB type mini plug, USB Type B mini. Yeah, it's one of those weird things for plugging into other cameras. And then you get a USB drive, and it's got all the drivers and the manual on it. So let's talk about the software. The software is both the greatest and sometimes the worst things about these monitors. And then some things just don't react like you think they should. But you know, honestly, that's my complaint for a lot of these monitors. Up until this one, this OC was kind of my favorite monitor. The problem with this one is it only has a single button here. That's a 4-way push button. And it does not have touchscreen either. So everything you do has to be through this weird button, and depending on what menu you do, up and down, left and right, and pressing the button do all kind of different things, and you just have to know what it is. And that's going to be sort of what this is all about. I'm just going to have to get used to this menu again of how to get in and out really quickly of what I need to do. So here's how this works. Here's how the software works. You can't do really a whole lot. If you tap on it, it will go to the last screen that it was on before you got rid of the screen. So for instance, right now it's on the settings screen, and the settings screen gives you control over how this actual monitor picture looks. You can dial it in with brightness, contrast, chroma, sharpness, bunch of stuff, the actual color temperature of the monitor itself, and it's even got anamorphic squeeze. You can change the input. You can go to the output here, whether you want the LUT to be delivered out on SDI out. And let's see, you can flip around the on-screen display if you want, depending on if you mount it upside down or something like that. Then you have general settings here. You can change the transparency of the OSD, just a bunch of stuff here. And these are interesting right here. You control the fan, and I would highly recommend that you leave the fan control on low. And here's why. Because high is a little loud, and I'm going to demonstrate getting my microphone real close. That's low. And that's high. So I would absolutely recommend to leave it on low all the time. It does come color calibrated from the factory. I don't really notice a big difference there, but I trust that they did a good job of calibrating it at the factory, so I leave that on. And then this black level, I'm not really sure. It just sort of makes the blacks a little bit blacker if I have that on. And then interestingly, it does have pinch to zoom, gesture zooming. Unfortunately, the gesture zooming is, if you use the gesture zooming, the pinch to zoom, you might be a little disappointed if you're used to the snappiness of your cell phone. So I'll show you real quick. I'm just going to tap out of here for a second to get rid of that so I have full screen. Now I'm going to pinch to zoom, and you can see that it works, but it's clunky. It like I wish the software was a little bit faster and a little bit more responsive. It's definitely a little bit slower than it is to pinch to zoom on, say, my Sony A7 IV camera. Anyway, so that's what we got for that. And then at the bottom there, we have the LUTs that you can load in and out. Obviously, you can turn it on and off. Loading them is pretty easy. You just put it on a USB stick, you stick it in there, and you would say something like USB looks, and it goes and it looks for that that USB, as you can see right there. It's looking for files. Now, I don't have one in there, but if I did, it would look like just any Windows file structure where it'd be, you know, C drive or whatever, and it would show all the listed things. And if you want to load one in, you just press the button, it loads, and then you're off to the races. And then what you have is, once they're all stored in here, they line up on the bottom of this screen, and you can just choose them. You can just jump around and whatever. I only have 2 in there right now for the Sony cameras. Over here, it will give you the volume, and then you can also update your firmware from a USB with that screen right there. From this screen, if you were to swipe left or right, I'll swipe left or whatever. Now this is the tools page. Now the tools page is where all the cool stuff is. And this has basically every tool I could think I'd ever want to use, except maybe the EL Zone false color stuff that you see that you can find on the small HD cameras, monitors, excuse me. It does have 2 other kinds of false color, and that's the RE false color, and then there's a user kind of defined false color. This is where the top buttons come into play. The first 4 tools on this screen will be the 4 buttons on top. So it would be a good idea to put your 4 most used tools in the first 4 sections here, and then make sure that they're also, you know, quick, that you may want to toggle them on and off. For instance, I have false color on my number 1 button. That is the RE color, and if I hit it again, that is the port keys false color. You can see I am very well exposed. And then clicking it one more time will turn it off. And curiously enough, when you do that, it takes you out of the menu screen, the tool screen. But if you tap again, you will go right back into the tool screen, because as I said, when you tap on it, it goes back to whatever screen you were on last. So then I also have my focus assist on button number 2, and I have all my scopes and graphs on button number 3. You can either do that with the buttons or by pressing each one over here. And on the fourth one there, I have like a, I think it's like a 200% punch in, and I use that to kind of check focus, you know, toggle on and off. The other tools that I personally like to use are a center grid, you know, my thirds grid. They have added a record button on this. Gripe number 3 is in the old software that was on the BM2, they had one of the coolest things where you could put a record button that would just sit overlaid on any screen at all times, whatever. So you didn't have to go looking for a particular screen to use the screen to record on and off. Now, what's interesting is once you get out of any of these menus, you don't have that record button possibility on any screen that you have here. You have to go back into one of the menus to get that record button. I would press it now, except I'm not physically connected to the camera right now, so it doesn't do anything. Then I have, you know, a waveform here and, you know, some other junk. That was zebras. I have a really quick button that can turn the LUT on and off. And here's how you change those things or find new ones. You simply, from either side, just swipe in and it shows you all of the different tools that you have available. And for instance, if I wanted to, see, I'm over here at zebras, and if I didn't want zebras, I could delete it. If I wanted to replace it with, say, I don't know, a vector scope, I just hit that and now bam, it's right there. You can have up to 12 different tools on this page. And if you need more than 12 tools, you're spending too much time looking at your tools instead of shooting your film. So whatever, you know, use that for whatever it is. Now, let me get out of there. There's even more to this, because what you can do is if you hold down the tool, it will then give you parameters at the bottom here that you can change. So for instance, if I were to turn my zebras on, nothing's overexposed to the point where it matters. Let's go to, turn that off. Let's go to the focus thing. So here I am, I have focus on. You can now see the red around what's in focus. And if I hold that down, now I can turn peaking on and off, the color style and the sensitivity of it. I can change the color. And one of the coolest things that I can do is change the grayscale value of the screen when it's on. So right now it's at 100. If I were to drop that to 0, now all I'm seeing is what's in focus. And what I actually prefer is this. It's halfway between. So you have basically a 50% opacity of whatever your camera's seeing, plus you see very brightly those focus lines, and I prefer to have the white focus lines. All right, so that's peaking. That's how you change these things. All right, here's where it gets fun, because that's what a lot of monitors do. A lot of monitors use that stuff. If you were to swipe down from this menu, now we're in camera control. And you can see here, based on whatever cable you have, or if you're using Bluetooth or whatever, you have different cameras down here that you can choose from. The Sony you can plug in, you can use the LAN cable for a Canon or a Zcam E2. But what's really cool is if you go here, this little button right here where it looks like the camera's Wi-Fi, the main reason I love this monitor is because I use an A7S Mark III and an A7 IV. Those cameras are on the list of cameras that will work wirelessly with this, as well as the RED Komodos that I use. So depending on what setups I'm using, if I'm shooting corporate and Sonys and what like that, this monitor will work for me. And if you can see here, if I already have my Komodos in there and my A7 IV in there. So it's just a matter of setting up the camera properly to send that Wi-Fi signal, and then as soon as I select it, it will come up. Now, the A7 IV that I'm shooting with right now is not currently waiting to get this set up, so that's why it's not doing it. But I will show you how to connect to each one of those cameras. All right, so I am going to show you really quickly how to set this up on a Sony. This happens to be the A7S III, but it's pretty much the exact same for the A7S IV. First, what you're going to do is go into your camera, and we'll assume that it just starts on whatever menu. You're going to come down here to the globe menu, and you want to come over and check your Wi-Fi. So your Wi-Fi should be on 2.4 gigahertz. So that's a thing. You want to come down here and make sure that airplane mode is not on. Make sure that it's off. And then, whoops, make sure that's off. And then you're going to come up here to transfer remote, and you want to go to control with smartphone. And you want to make sure that's on. Now on the A7 IV, this takes you directly to where you want to go, but on the A7S III, you have to go to connection, and it will show you this screen. You lose your HDMI output for some reason. I'm not really sure why that is. But on both cameras, you want to press this down here, connect with password. You can't actually get there from any other way other than touching that. All right. And it's going to give you the password. In my case, it's that. All right, then you want to come over here to your monitor, and we'll swipe down to get to, usually it starts on that, but you're gonna touch that little camera Wi-Fi button, and then you're going to add new device. And looky, you have a choice right there, and it's already ready to go. You're gonna touch that. And then we're going to put in the password. Password is in, we hit OK. It's going to connect, please wait. And now we are back to seeing that. You go back into control, and there it is, it's all there. So now I can control the iris. Here's what we do to connect to the RED Komodo. Now I've got this pointing straight up right now, so we're not going to see anything on the monitor, but this is just to show you, you're going to want to come into your menu system, and then you're going to come down into communications, go into connections, Wi-Fi, and then make sure that the mode is ad hoc, and under ad hoc you're going to name your SSID or name your camera Komodo something. So as you can see right here, mine is called Komodo A because this is A cam. And then I have my password the same as that just to keep things simple. So if you're ever on set with me, I guess you could steal my password, whatever, I don't care. And then you got to make sure that this is on 2.4 gigahertz. The monitor only works at 2.4 gigahertz. So once that's all done, we're going to back out of this. And there you go. You're seeing the screen. I'm going to tilt that back down. And now we're going to go to the monitor. And in the monitor, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to swipe down to camera. Look at that. It's already connected. I didn't mean to do that because I didn't mean to do it, but I already had my Komodo A and Komodo B in this, but it's literally the same thing where you would go to add new device, and it would show up right down here as the A7S III did, but it would show up as Komodo A, and you just select it, and then you connect, and then again, this is working just the same as the Sony camera works. And it is generally just that easy to connect to the camera. And I will say that autofocus does work with this. How do I get this to work? Let me see. Okay, so if I were to tap there, autofocus does work through the Komodo. Autofocus is not that not as good on a Komodo as it is on a Sony, but the screen is quite responsive and it gets you to where you're going. Okay, so you can see here that I do now have it connected to the Sony camera, the A7 IV, and all these things have popped up on the sides here. I can control the iris. I can make that go down to 7.1 and back up to 2.8. I have a big old record button right here on the bottom of the screen. I can change the shutter speed, the ISO. If I were shooting in any mode other than manual, say aperture priority or shutter priority, I could change the EV on it. I can change the white balance, and here's something that's interesting. If I'm selected on this Kelvin scale, I also have a Kelvin slider that I can change and make very, very warm and very cool. And the one cool thing on this is that I do have touch to focus camera control through the screen. So let's say, how do I do this? If I want to focus on my hand, there you go. I can focus back on my face, just like that. What's interesting though is that it doesn't focus like that on all modes. So let's say for whatever reason, right now I'm on a expanded wide point focus or whatever Sony calls it. If I were just on regular super wide, it doesn't touch to focus. I'm not really sure why it doesn't, but it doesn't. This, if I were to do it on the screen on the camera, wherever I click, wherever I touch on the screen, that sets a focus tracking point. And if the camera moves or the subject moves, it'll follow that thing. For whatever reason, that doesn't work through this monitor. So I generally keep it on that wide thing so that I can focus on the thing behind me there. And now I'm focused back on my face. Oh, so I can go to manual focus, and that is not very useful because these are all touch buttons that don't seem to do anything until I touch them, and it's not like a real time. It's not like I can hold it down and it will slowly focus to something else. So I really just want to keep this on autofocus all the time because yeah, it doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense to do it otherwise. Now, if from this screen I were to swipe up, that will now give me the focus motor control. So if I did have a nucleus motor, tilted nucleus motor set up on the camera right here, I could set A and B points. I could set the time between focus pulls. I could do, you know, step at a time, I could tell it to focus here or there. I do want to mention one little thing here is that when you're on camera control, it would be super nice if you could hold down this slider and you could see the changes as you're sliding. Unfortunately, you can't. You don't see anything change until you let go, and then it makes the change. That is the same for the shutter button. If I were to go down to 8, all of a sudden I should be, yep, super overexposed and jittery. And whoa, now you can't see me at all. But now I'm at, you know, 200th of a second. You can't tap out of this screen. You can't tap out of the camera control screen. And the reason why is because it thinks you're trying to focus when you do that. So there are a couple different ways you can get out of this screen. You can just pinch to zoom and then pinch back to get it. You can press the exit button. You can press any of these buttons up here, but unfortunately when you do, you toggle whatever that button is assigned to. So while port keys have really crammed a lot of functionality into this monitor, the software could really use a redesign. And I am happy to report that one is coming. They just released something called MoveNorm OS. It's a completely redesigned OS that promises to be easier to use. And MoveNorm only came out for a select few of their newer, more mainstream monitors. But they have promised that a similar update is coming to their more professional cinema monitors, and that is going to be called Cinenorm OS. I look forward to seeing what improvements they make to an already really full, usable monitor at this, let's say it's an affordable price for a professional. And when I say professional, it's not small HD professional, but it's certainly not Feel World, Lilliput, you know, that sort of super budget monitor. Would I buy another one of these? No, probably not. But the reason why I wouldn't buy another one of these is because the BM7 Mark II DS, that's the actual monitor that I can really, really use on either of my camera systems. And that's only for the lack of the HDMI output on these monitors. Right now, when I'm running a Sony rig, I have to use a little box that converts HDMI to SDI, which is just another piece on the rig. It's another thing to power, and because I'm almost always using a monitor and a video transmitter, so I need to have that pass-through ability to go to two different sources. So that's why that I would probably, if I were to buy another one of these, it would be the BM7 Mark II DS. The other interesting thing about this monitor is that it does not cross-convert, meaning that if I go into HDMI in here, I cannot go SDI out to something else. There are monitors that do that. This Atomos monitor does it. All the small HD monitors do it. There is a Feel World monitor that is actually, it was less expensive than this one, called the SH7, that does cross conversion. But again, it doesn't have the camera controls like the BM5WR and the BM7 Mark II DS. And that is really what makes this a very valuable monitor, at least for my use case of using the Sony system and the RED Komodo system. So is this monitor the best choice for everyone? Well, no, definitely not. There's much less expensive monitors available for general use. Like I said, the Feel World LUT 7, which is this monitor except without the SDI, that's like 250 bucks. And this is a nicely made, you know, little monitor. OC makes a T5, which is a smaller version of this. And a lot of times that goes on sale for like $125. So if you don't need SDI and you don't need a touch screen, you can get a great screen for 125 bucks. And if you absolutely need the professional connectivity and you have a professional budget, then obviously get the small HD, because that's going to put you at a little bit of a higher level and walking onto a more professional set with small HD monitors. I will say that the BM5WR and the BM7 Mark II DS are the only monitors on the planet that can wirelessly control both the Sony systems and the RED Komodo systems. So for me, this is the perfect monitor. So thank you for watching, and as always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment, and I'll probably get back to you in a day or so. So until next time, thanks.